Welcome to The Explainer. We're tackling a huge question today. Does sociology actually have scientific laws? I mean, this is a question that kind of shakes the whole foundation of the field. If it doesn't have laws, can we even call it a science? Let's dig in and find out. And believe me, the stakes here are incredibly high. Just look at this quote from sociologist Donald Black back in 2000. He called modern sociology unscientific and ideological. I mean, wow. That's a pretty devastating critique, right? It's a charge that cuts right to the very core of what sociology is supposed to be. So this all leads us to the big central question we're tackling today. If science is all about describing, explaining, and predicting things, and all of that relies on having causal laws, then, where are they? Where are sociology's laws? Seriously, this question has been haunting the field for decades. And this whole situation has plunged the field into a bit of an identity crisis, all centered around these supposedly missing laws. Okay, so here's the popular take on sociology, right? It just doesn't seem to have those hard laws like physics or chemistry. It's often seen as, well, kind of fragmented, a little less scientific. And think about it. Any famous laws that get proposed, like the iron law of oligarchy, which basically says a small elite will always end up in charge, you can almost immediately think of an exception. And because of this, a lot of sociologists have just given up. They've stopped talking about laws completely.
But what if this whole crisis, this whole debate, is built on a complete myth? What if the problem isn't with sociology, but with how we're defining a scientific law in the first place?
So the whole problem really boils down to two totally different ways of looking at science. On one hand, you've got what we can call the naive view. This is the idea that a law is this perfect, single, exceptionless rule. It either works all the time or it's not a law. But the way scientists actually think about it is way more nuanced. A law isn't some lonely island. It's part of this big, interconnected web of ideas that all support each other. And this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. The number one reason people say sociology can't have laws is exceptions. They always have exceptions, right? You can always find some situation where the supposed law just doesn't hold up. Yeah, because of all these exceptions, social laws have to come with this little asterisk next to them. It's a condition called ceteris paribus. That's just Latin for all else being equal. It means the law only works perfectly in a bubble, you know? Like, think about the law of supply and demand. That only works if you assume a perfect market with no other weird stuff going on. Okay, and this is where things get really interesting. Because everyone points to this all else being equal thing as the fatal flaw, the reason social science isn't a real science. But there's a secret, a huge secret that most people don't know, and it's about to reframe this entire debate. Get this, so do the laws of physics. Yeah, you heard me right. Those super hard sciences, they lean on ceteris paribus all the time. Take Kepler's laws of planetary motion. They only work because they pretend that other planets and stars don't exist and aren't pulling on things. Or what about Newton's first law of motion? An object in motion stays in motion. That only holds true in a perfect vacuum with zero other forces at play, which, doesn't actually exist anywhere in the real universe. So, okay, if even physics doesn't have these perfect, exceptionless laws we've been told about, then what's the alternative? Well, the answer is to stop thinking about single rules and start thinking about a web of connections. This is what's called the web of laws approach. And the idea is pretty simple, actually. Something isn't a law because it's flawless and stands all by itself. No. It becomes a law because it clicks into place, because it fits perfectly into a whole system of other laws. The connections are what matter, not its perfection in isolation. So how do you actually build one of these webs? Well, it's a process. First, you look for real, repeating patterns of cause and effect out in the world. Then, you try to weave those patterns into a set of ideas that all make sense together. And the real trick, the art of it, is finding that perfect balance, that sweet spot, between keeping the laws simple enough to be useful, but also strong enough to actually explain and predict things. Let's make this real with an actual example. Look at behavior genetics. They have these three core laws that work together like a mini web. First law, pretty much all human behaviors are heritable to some degree. Second law, the family you grow up in has less of an effect on you than your genes do. But then comes the third law, and this is key. A huge chunk of who you are can't be explained by either your genes or your family. See how that works? They don't stand alone. That third law totally changes how you interpret the first two. Together, they give you a much more complete and honestly more accurate picture. Okay, so now that we're armed with this powerful web of laws idea, let's go back and take on those big objections to social laws head on. And this, right here, is a total game changer. Think about it. In that old naive view, one single exception meant the law was dead, kaput. But in this new web view, an exception is just a puzzle. It's a clue. It doesn't mean the law is wrong. It probably just means another law from somewhere else in the web stepped in and changed the outcome. All of a sudden, exceptions aren't a fatal flaw. They're actually a feature. They're how science moves forward. All right, but what about the big one? The human agency argument. This is the other huge objection you always hear. The idea goes something like this. Humans have free will. So if you tell us there's a law about our behavior, we can just hear it, say nope, and choose to do the exact opposite, breaking the law. But here's the thing. For that argument to actually hold water, agency or free will would have to be this magical, mystical force that exists completely outside of cause and effect. It would have to be totally separate from our biology, our environment, our history, everything. And scientifically speaking, that just doesn't make sense. Our choices, our agency, are part of the causal web, not some ghost in the machine that's outside of it. So yeah, people might change their behavior if they learn about a law, but that change itself is just another effect with a cause that we can, in theory, explain. So, where does all this leave us? What does it actually mean for the future of sociology? Well, it means the field has a path forward to building a mature science. By really embracing this web of laws idea, sociology can finally become what the famous philosopher of science Thomas Kuhn called a mature science. And what does that mean? It means it can stop having endless arguments about its own foundations and actually start building knowledge. It can get down to the business of cumulative puzzle solving, just like other sciences. And why does this matter so much? Because when you have a shared framework, a shared set of models, you can actually solve problems together. Knowledge can build on itself, one discovery leading to the next. It finally lets sociology fulfill the real goal of science, to describe, to explain, and, yes, to predict. It's the key to moving away from having a million different approaches that get you nowhere to having a few solid approaches that get you a ton of results. So when you get right down to it, it seems the problem was never that social laws don't exist. It's that we were all looking for them with the wrong map, with a totally flawed definition. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? If you had to propose one law to start building this web of social science, what fundamental, undeniable pattern of human life would you pick?